Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast, Advanced C1 Level Grammar Listening Podcast. Welcome to the deep dive. If you're joining us today, you've probably already mastered the basics. You're fluent, you communicate well, but you feel like there's a ceiling, right? And you're ready to break through it. We're not just aiming for simple communication anymore. We are aiming for, genuine mastery.
That's the perfect word for it, mastery.
Yeah, that linguistic sophistication that lets you sound authoritative and get your ideas across with total precision.
That is the crucial distinction, isn't it? Getting to the C1 level, what some people call the operational proficiency level, it's less about just cramming in 1,000 new nouns.
Right.
It's much more about mastering the grammatical architecture of the language.
The architecture, I like that.
Yeah, it's about understanding that structural framework that makes sure your most complex, your most nuanced thoughts are expressed with, impeccable clarity. And a bit of elegance, too.
I love that idea of architectural mastery. It feels like we're building custom structures now, not just, simple houses.
Exactly.
So our mission today is to break down that C1 framework. We're going to explore the tools that let you actively manipulate sentences shifting word order for dramatic emphasis or condensing clauses for conciseness.
And selecting the exact shade of meaning you need for those professional or academic settings. It's all about nuance.
Right.
We'll cover the elements that really distinguish an advanced user from a merely fluent one. Sophisticated tense sequencing, the strategic use of inversion.
And things like nominalization and reduced clauses, which make you sound so much more fluid.
Absolutely. Think of these not as just a list of rules, but as really powerful rhetorical tools you can use.
Okay, so let's start where all language really begins, which is with the verb. It's the engine of the sentence, right?
It is.
At C1, just knowing the 12 standard tenses,
Right.
well, that's not enough. We have to leverage their maximum potential for showing these really nuanced time relationships.
Precisely. Let's take the present perfect continuous. Most learners are pretty comfortable using it for actions that started in the past and are still going on. Something like, I have been working on this proposal since morning.
Sure, that's straightforward. But the really advanced application, the C1 level usage, is using it when the action is just finished.
Yes.
And the result is immediate and visible right now in the present moment. It connects that recent past directly to what's happening now.
Think about the cause and effect here. You use it for an action whose consequences are obvious right now. So if you walk into a room and you see someone sweating, a bit out of breath, you might say.
You look tired. Have you been working out?
Exactly. The act of working out is over, but the physical evidence, that visible result, that's what triggers the tense choice.
That is the key connection. Past action, present proof. What about the kitchen smells fantastic because she's been baking bread all afternoon. The baking's done, but that amazing smell is the undeniable current reality.
It's a powerful way to explain a present condition. Now, let's pivot to sequencing past events. This demands a really fluent command of the past perfect simple versus the continuous.
Oh, this is so important for storytelling.
It is. The past perfect is vital in complex narratives or, say, historical reporting, where you need absolute clarity on the chronology of what happened first.
So the simple past perfect is for an action that was completely finished before another past action happened. It sets up a clear timeline. By the time the search party reached the summit, the blizzard had already started.
Right. Blizzard starting was event 1. Arrival was event 2. Clear sequence.
So what about the continuous?
The past perfect continuous, on the other hand, it stresses the duration, the ongoing nature of an activity that was happening up to, or maybe was even interrupted by, another past moment. It gives you the context.
Okay, an example of that would be the committee finally approved the new policy after they had been debating the funding issues for 6 months.
Yes. The continuous had been debating really adds weight. It emphasizes the duration and the difficulty, which explains why the final approval was so significant. It just adds context that the simple form can't quite capture.
That makes sense.
And looking ahead, C1 speakers have to skillfully handle the future perfect tenses. These are, they're indispensable for planning, for setting goals, because they project actions relative to a future deadline.
Okay, so the future perfect simple.
No.
That one's pretty straightforward. It's an action that will be completed by a specific future time. By the end of the fiscal year, we will have implemented the new security protocol.
A definite, finalized action in the future. Check.
And the continuous?
The future perfect continuous projects an ongoing action that will still be running right up to that future point. It emphasizes the length of the effort. A classic example is, by the time I retire, I will have been teaching for 35 years.
Right. The structure really highlights the sheer longevity of the commitment. Okay. Moving beyond just the standard time frames, C1 grammar lets us, blend realities using mixed conditionals. This seems essential because real life rarely fits neatly into those type 1, 2, or 3 boxes we all learned.
It never does, and that's the point. We're linking different temporal planes. The one you'll see most often is type 3 plus type 2.
Okay, so what's happening there?
You have a hypothetical condition in the past. That's the type 3 structure affecting a hypothetical result in the present, which is the type 2 structure.
Right, so let's break down that logic. How about if she hadn't taken the night shift, that's the past unreal condition.
Right.
She would not be so tired now. The present unreal result. The mistake in the past is directly causing her state in the present.
It's incredibly useful for analyzing historical mistakes and their lasting repercussions. And you can reverse it, too. You can do a type 2 plus type 3 blend.
So that would be a general ongoing condition affecting a past result.
Precisely. A present unreal condition explaining a past unreal outcome.
Okay, so if I'm a disorganized person, that's my general condition, a type 2 thing. So I could say, if I were better at managing my time,
Your ongoing condition.
I wouldn't have missed that crucial deadline last week.
Mm.
The past unreal result. It connects a general character flaw to a specific failure.
And that elevates the argument. It's more sophisticated than a simple type 3 statement of regret. Now, for real formality and rhetorical power, we get to inverted conditionals.
This is a structure that just immediately signals higher level of discourse because you're dropping the word if.
You are. And the inversion is triggered by moving one of 3 specific auxiliary verbs to the front of the sentence. The first one is should.
We use that for type 1 possibilities, right?
Right.
Often in formal letters or instructions.
Absolutely. Compare, if you have any questions, contact us, which is fine with the inverted form. Should you require further clarification, please direct your inquiry to the manager.
It just sounds so much more professional. It has a layer of politeness.
It does. The second one is were, for the type 2 hypothetical situation. Were I to accept that position, I would demand a higher salary. You're putting that condition right at the front. It makes for a very strong statement.
And the third one has to be had for the type 3 unreal past.
It is. Had the team followed the original instructions, the project would have been completed on time. Removing if and starting with had I known creates this powerful sense of, literary drama or formal accountability.
And beyond just inversion, a C1 speaker should really avoid monotony by using a whole range of different conditional conjunctions, not just sticking to if all the time.
Yes, these other phrases clarify the precise nature of the condition. Something like provided that or providing that real stresses that something is a prerequisite.
For example, the funding will be released, provided that all necessary paperwork is completed by Tuesday.
Then you have phrases that stress continuity, like as long as, or exceptions like unless. But for a very high level of formality, you have on condition that.
That sounds very official.
It is. The merger will proceed on condition that no jobs are eliminated. It feels definitive, almost legally binding.
And what about that very elegant one, but for?
For is fantastic. It's a powerful shorthand for if it had not been for, and it's often followed immediately by a noun phrase.
It's so effective for summarizing a crucial intervention. The play was a disaster, but for the lead actor's magnificent performance, the audience would have walked out.
It perfectly isolates that single positive factor that prevented total failure. It's incredibly concise.
Okay, so the final touch in advanced verb usage is the subjunctive mood. This is something that feels a bit old-fashioned, but it persists in English in very formal or mandatory contexts.
It absolutely does. It's essential for formal requests, demands, or statements of necessity. The trick is just remembering the grammar rule. The verb in that dependent clause has to be the base form.
Regardless of the subject, no wins on the third person singular.
No whiz. This usually follows verbs like suggest, recommend, demand, insist, and after adjectives like essential, vital, crucial.
For example, the policy requires that every employee be trained in the new software. And you have to notice, it's not every employee is trained.
Precisely. Or it is crucial that he present the findings personally, not he presents.
So what's the effect of that?
This structure, it kind of removes the sense of time. It focuses purely on the mandate or the necessity, which lends this impartial, elevated tone to the statement. You also find it in fixed expressions, which are like little linguistic fossils.
Right. Things like be that as it may, or when we talk about a hypothetical desire, we still use were. I wish I were able to speak 5 languages.
Exactly. Even though you might hear I wish I was in informal speech, recognizing and using were in formal contexts is a very clear C1 marker.
So we've really established a command over the verb. Now let's talk about manipulating the sentence itself. C1 proficiency means you can deliberately shift the word order to get maximum dramatic effect or formality.
This is where we get to put the spotlight on key information.
And that's with inversions.
That's a great analogy, the spotlight. Inversion is the rhetorical equivalent of suddenly grabbing the reader's full attention. It happens when you move a negative or a restrictive adverbial phrase to the start of the sentence.
And that forces the auxiliary verb to come before the subject, just like in a question.
Right. It sounds simple, but the effect is profound. It immediately signals that something important or unusual or restrictive is coming up. We see it with phrases like never before, rarely, seldom, and little.
So let's compare. I could say, the committee has rarely seen such strong resistance. That's functional.
Informative, but boring.
Right. But if you invert it, rarely has the committee seen such strong resistance. The statement suddenly gains drama, anticipation, and a lot more weight.
The inversion with little is especially powerful for setting up a kind of narrative twist. If you just say, I knew little about the political landscape, it's a bit passive.
But if you front it, little did I know that I was walking into the most significant political event of my career. It just sets a tone of dramatic irony right from the start.
We also use inversion to emphasize restrictive or prohibitive conditions, which you find all the time in formal rules and regulations. Phrases like, under no circumstances or on no account.
So a simple warning like, you should not enter the restricted area is fine. But the elevated formal version is, on no account should visitors enter the restricted area. That sounds much more serious.
Definitive and serious. We also use inversion to describe events that happen almost at the same time, using those paired structures hardly had when or no sooner had than.
This structure really emphasizes speed, doesn't it? No sooner had the manager announced the layoffs than the employees started protesting. It highlights that instantaneous link between the cause and the reaction.
Exactly. And we use it for emphasizing timing with phrases like only when or only after. Only after verifying the biometric data were we allowed to proceed. The inversion makes that first condition absolutely mandatory.
And finally, there's that highly literary inversion to emphasize degree, starting with so or such.
Yes. So successful was the launch that the company immediately expanded its product line. It just amplifies the adjective, making the consequence feel almost inevitable.
Okay, so if inversion is a spotlight, what are cleft sentences?
Cleft sentences are the magnifying glass. They achieve emphasis by splitting the core message into 2 separate clauses, forcing the reader's attention onto one specific piece of information.
Okay, the first type is the it cleft. We start with it is or it was, followed by the thing we want to emphasize, and then the rest of the sentence.
Take a simple sentence. The faulty wiring caused the fire?
Yeah.
If we want to emphasize the cause.
We'd say it was the faulty wiring that caused the fire. I can see how that would be indispensable in, say, an investigation report to clearly identify who or what was responsible.
Or you could emphasize the time. It was last Monday when the audit was completed. It's a very flexible tool.
And then we have we clefts, also called pseudo-clefts.
Right. These usually start with what and are followed by a form of the verb to be.
They seem particularly useful for emphasizing the action or the thing that's needed. If my thought is, I desperately need a proper vacation, I can transform it to emphasize that need.
What I desperately need is a proper vacation, or to emphasize the action itself. What we must ensure is that the budget remains balanced. The what clause sets up the topic, and then the bit after the verb delivers the main focus. It's extremely common in arguments and proposals for setting priorities.
Okay, and then there's fronting, which is a bit gentler, but still a strategic way of moving an element in the start of the sentence for prominence, but without necessarily requiring that whole verb inversion thing.
That's a good way to put it. It's often used to establish context or a contrasting condition before you deliver the main clause. It gives a more dramatic or reflective tone, which you see a lot in literary writing or persuasive speeches.
So instead of saying, the council approved the measure, despite the public outcry, the fronted version has more impact. Despite the public outcry, the council approved the measure.
Yes, Highlighting the difficulty first really sets the stage for the main action. It changes the whole rhythm. You can even front objects for dramatic effect, although it sounds a bit poetic.
Like what?
Such a magnificent collection of artifacts have I never witnessed in my life. It's not everyday speech, but it emphasizes the sheer scope of the object before you even get to the verb.
Right. A very formal literary style.
Yeah.
Okay, so mastery of C1 means moving past just the mechanics of reported speech and becoming more of an interpreter.
I like that, an interpreter.
You're not just conveying what was said, but the speaker's intention, their tone, the complexity behind it.
And while basic backshifts are standard, C1 speakers have to handle the trickier tense situations. For instance, the past perfect tenses, both simple and continuous, they don't backshift any further. There's nowhere for them to go.
Okay, so if the direct speech was, we had been preparing for weeks, the reported speech stays the same. They confirm that they had been preparing for weeks.
No further shift needed. It prevents any kind of temporal confusion. Now, the ability to accurately report questions is maybe the quickest litmus test for C1 status.
Right. That's a dead giveaway, isn't it?
It is. The critical rule, the one that intermediate learners often miss, is that you have to drop the question mark and go back to statement word order, subject plus verb.
So if the direct question is, when did the CEO resign? Which uses inversion. Did before CEO, the reported form absolutely has to be. The journalist asked when the CEO had resigned.
The subject, CEO, must come before the verb had resigned. That lack of inversion is just crucial for flow and correctness.
What about commands and requests?
They offer a really efficient structure, just the reporting verb plus an object plus the infinitive. It's much more economical than a clunky that clause.
So for a command like, stop the vehicle immediately, she commanded.
To comes. She ordered the driver to stop the vehicle immediately. The infinitive structure is a hallmark of efficiency.
And requests and negative commands follow the same pattern, right?
Yeah.
Please reconsider, he begged, becomes, he begged them to reconsider.
Exactly. And for a negative, do not delay the payment becomes, the bank insisted on me not to delay the payment. It's clean and direct.
We also have to recognize that offers, suggestions, and advice need different structures, depending on the verb, to make sure the reported language fits the original intention.
Absolutely. An offer uses the infinitive. He offered to assist with the paperwork. But a suggestion often takes the gerund. She suggested reviewing the budget again.
That distinction really helps capture the precise nature of what was said.
It does. And this is where that interpreter role you mentioned really comes into play. Instead of just blandly using the word said, C1 proficiency demands you select verbs that precisely convey the speaker's purpose or emotion.
And the verb choice has to correctly link to the grammar that follows, whether that's a gerund, an infinitive, or a prepositional phrase.
So, for suggesting or proposing, verbs like propose and recommend often lead into a gerund structure. The consultant recommended implementing the changes immediately.
And if the original communication involves some kind of conflict, we use verbs related to complaining or criticizing, which are often followed by specific prepositions.
That's key. They complained about the lack of heating, or the lawyer accused his opponent of misleading the jury. You have to have about and of. They're mandatory.
For conveying future actions with strong feelings, we've got warning or threatening verbs, usually followed by an infinitive. The security officer warned us not to enter the construction zone.
Or the union threatened to strike if negotiations failed. And when you're dealing with past facts or actions, the verbs deny and admit are crucial, and they are non-negotiably followed by the gerund.
The politician denied having received the confidential file. She admitted making a significant error.
By incorporating all this variety, you stop being just a simple conveyor of words.
You start acting as a nuanced analyst of the original conversation.
That's it, exactly. To produce fluent, sophisticated C1 prose, whether it's written or spoken, you need the tools that create high cohesion. You have to be able to weave together complex thoughts and details seamlessly.
And relative clauses are the threads that bind all that supplementary information to the nouns. At C1, just understanding the impact of a simple comma is huge.
Paramount.
Yeah.
Especially when differentiating between defining and non-defining clauses.
So a defining clause is vital. It tells us which specific thing we're talking about, and it uses no commas. The employees who work remotely must attend the training, meaning only that specific group of employees.
The clause defines the group. A non-defining clause, on the other hand, gives you extra non-essential information. It's always bracketed by commas, and this is crucial, you cannot use the pronoun that.
So the new software, which was expensive, requires retraining. If I take out which was expensive, the main sentence still works. The commas are a signal that it's just extra commentary.
And the placement of those commas can literally change the meaning. Consider this. The technicians who wear blue uniforms are highly trained.
Okay, that means only the ones in blue are highly trained.
Right. But what about the technicians who wear blue uniforms are highly trained?
With the commas, it implies that all the technicians are highly trained, and they all just happen to wear blue uniforms. Wow, that one little comma could be worth thousands of dollars in a technical contract.
It absolutely could. Now, for the highest level of formality, we have to talk about the formal placement of prepositions. In everyday speech, we let the preposition hang at the end. That's the report I was referring to.
But in formal writing?
In formal writing, the preposition must come before the relative pronoun, usually whom for people, which for things. That is the issue to which the committee must give its immediate attention.
Or, he is the expert upon whom we rely. That structure is just instant proof of advanced writing skill.
It is. Another powerful tool for conciseness is the reduced relative clause. This lets you just shave off the relative pronoun and the verb be, condensing two clauses into one elegant phrase.
So for an active meaning, we use the present participle, the ing form. Instead of the investor who's leading the negotiations is flying in tomorrow, we can just say,
the investor leading the negotiations is flying in tomorrow. It's so much more compact.
And for a passive meaning, we use the past participle, the ed form. The equipment which was purchased last quarter is already obsolete becomes the equipment purchased last quarter is already obsolete.
It creates this highly compact, dense, professional-sounding writing. And finally, for C1 clauses, you need to be precise with attribution or quantification using quantifiers.
Right. This is standard in academic writing or complex analysis. You have to be precise. We surveyed 30 businesses, a third of which reported increased profits.
Or the board reviewed 5 options, none of which were deemed acceptable. It keeps the sentence flowing smoothly while providing highly specific data points.
Okay, so if relative clauses are the threads, then discourse markers are the sophisticated knots and linkages that create a cohesive argument. You have to move past just so, but, and because.
That is mandatory. When you're contrasting or conceding, you need variety. Terms like nevertheless, nonetheless, even so, and albeit signal a much more nuanced counterargument. Albeit is especially efficient, it often just means although it must be said.
So I could say, the new strategy is fundamentally sound, albeit expensive. It lets you introduce a small limiting factor without breaking the flow of your main point.
Precisely. And for showing cause, effect, or result, we use these formal declarative terms like consequently, therefore, thus, hence.
So if the data shows a clear trend, expenditure increased by 15%, consequently, we must revise the budget. The word consequently clearly establishes that dependent relationship. The second part is an inevitable outcome of the first.
And when you're illustrating or exemplifying, instead of the simple for example, you can use for instance, namely in particular or specifically. Namely is superb for introducing a comprehensive list that clarifies a broader statement you just made.
For example, the regulation covers several areas of environmental impact, namely air quality, water runoff, and ground contamination. It signals that the list that follows is the complete category.
And of course, for summarizing, you need to signal the conclusion of a complex argument using structures like to sum up, all in all, to recapitulate, or my favorite concise one, in a nutshell.
A great one.
C1 grammar really rewards efficiency. Think of this next section as optimizing your linguistic code. Participle clauses are arguably the most effective tool for cutting unnecessary words, especially in formal writing.
They allow us to get rid of full subordinate clauses and combine actions, showing either simultaneity or causality. They're very powerful modifiers.
The present participle, the ing form, serves 2 main purposes. First, simultaneous actions. Sitting in the waiting room, she nervously reviewed her notes. That replaces while she was sitting.
And second, cause and effect. Fearing rejection, he delayed submitting the final draft, which replaces because he feared rejection. It just streamlines the sentence so dramatically.
It does. The past participle, the ed form, is used for a passive meaning or a result. So if the subject has had something done to it, you use the past participle. Overwhelmed by the workload, the team requested additional support.
Meaning because the team was overwhelmed.
Exactly. And then you have the perfect participle, having plus the past participle. This is crucial for clear sequencing. It indicates that the action of the clause was definitively finished before the main action began.
So, having reviewed all the available evidence, the jury reached a verdict. It clearly separates the two actions. The review finished, then the verdict started.
Without the perfect participle, that temporal relationship could be ambiguous. Now, we have to issue a serious warning here about one of the most common high-level grammatical errors, the dangling participle.
Ah, yes. This is when the implied subject of the participle clause doesn't logically match the subject of the main clause.
It's the classic error. If you write, walking down the street, a large hole was suddenly visible, you're accidentally implying that the hole was taking a stroll down the street.
It sounds unintentionally funny or just confusing. The subject has to be logical. Walking down the street, I suddenly saw a large hole. You always have to check that the actor is clear.
Always.
Okay. Beyond the standard rules, C1 requires recognizing those subtle but critical shifts in meaning when certain verbs can be followed by both a gerund and an infinitive. Ignoring this can change your meaning completely.
The verb stop is a perfect example. Stop doing something means permanent cessation. I stopped eating red meat. But stop to do something means pausing one activity to start another.
She stopped her car to check the map. The intention is the complete opposite.
It is. Another tricky pair is regret. If you regret a past action, you use the gerund. I regret spending so much money last year. But if you regret the necessity of delivering bad news, you use the infinitive.
We regret to inform you that the conference has been canceled. So the first one is about guilt. The second is a formal apology.
Exactly. Try also changes meaning drastically. Try doing something suggests an experiment. If the computer freezes, try restarting it. But try to do something implies making a difficult, purposeful effort. He tried desperately to lift the heavy box.
And the verb need reveals a very advanced structural choice. The carpet needs cleaning. Uses the gerund to express a passive meaning. It means it needs to be cleaned.
But it's shorter and highly idiomatic. If you use the infinitive, it becomes active. I need to clean the carpet.
Right.
Finally, C1 proficiency requires being able to use the perfect and passive forms of both gerunds and infinitives.
The perfect gerund, having done, emphasizes that the action of the gerund happened before the main verb. The CEO is criticized for having ignored the warnings.
And the passive infinitive, to be done, is crucial in formal settings. The project is expected to be completed by the deadline. This structure just efficiently shifts the focus away from whoever is doing the action.
This brings us to nominalization, which sounds very academic.
It is the cornerstone of academic, scientific, and highly bureaucratic writing. It's just the process of turning verbs or adjectives into nouns. So discuss becomes discussion, important becomes importance.
But why is this a C1 marker?
Because it achieves extreme formality and a kind of perceived objectivity. When you replace a verb-based clause with a noun phrase, you often remove the subjective human agent, making the statement sound more fact-based.
Okay, so a verbal sentence would be, the panel thoroughly discussed the data. The subject is the panel, a group of people.
But the nominalized version is, the panel's discussion of the data was thorough. You see, it reduces the dynamic action and makes the event itself the centerpiece. Instead of saying, when they decided, we write, following the decision.
So it reduces clauses, tightens the prose, and lends an almost impersonal scientific tone.
That's it.
Okay. Achieving authority in English also depends on strategic choices about voice, specifically the passive, and that subtle fine-tuning of meaning using advanced modal verbs.
Right. At this level, we're using the passive voice not because we don't know the active, but because we are making a deliberate strategic choice. The reasons are key. Achieving objectivity, formality, shifting focus, or sometimes deliberately obscuring the agent.
Ah, that last point. Obscuring the agent. That's the so-called political passive, isn't it? The classic example is mistakes were made.
It's the classic. It acknowledges an error happened without anyone taking personal accountability, a very common rhetorical move.
But on the other hand, the passive can focus attention purely on the result or the action itself. The ancient texts were only discovered in the 20th century. Who discovered them is less important than the discovery itself.
Exactly. And we should also mention the informal get passive, which often implies something surprising or unexpected or negative.
Like, I got caught speeding on the highway. It's informal. But recognizing its specific use for accidental or dramatic events is definitely part of C1 comprehension.
But the most sophisticated passive structures involve reporting verbs. You see this constantly in news and formal attribution when the source is general or vague. There are two main structures.
Structure one is the impersonal passive, starting with it. It is believed that the new regulations will be approved. This implies a consensus without naming a specific source.
And structure 2 is the personal passive, where the subject of the reported clause moves to the front. The witness is said to be collaborating with the police. Now, if the reported action happened in the past, we use the perfect infinitive.
The former minister is known to have embezzled millions during his tenure. That use of the passive with the perfect infinitive shows a really deep command of attribution and timing.
It's very advanced.
Okay, modal verbs. They're like a fine-tuning dial for certainty and possibility. For C1, past deduction making educated guesses about past events is an absolute requirement.
And we have to clearly differentiate the degrees of certainty. High certainty uses must have plus the past participle. The office is empty, they must have left early. It's a strong logical conclusion.
And conversely, high certainty of impossibility uses can't or couldn't have plus the past participle. He was in the meeting with me, he can't have been at the airport.
It's a near certain rejection of a possibility. And then for lower certainty or just a possibility, we use may, might, or could have plus the past participle. I don't know where she went. She might have taken the day off.
So you're reserving judgment, acknowledging there are multiple possible outcomes.
This brings up the crucial contrast between deduction, which is must have, and counterfactual regret, which is should have. Must have explains what logically did happen. Should have expresses what didn't happen, but was desired or expected.
Okay, so if I say, they must have missed the flight, I'm deducting a probable fact.
Right.
But if I say they should have left earlier, I'm expressing regret or criticizing their past action.
Exactly. The modal choice carries a completely different philosophical meaning. It moves from probability to judgment.
And for obligation, C1 speakers recognize the difference between that internal, self-imposed obligation of must and the external rules or necessity of have to.
And for very formal arrangements or schedules, the elevated structure B2 is used. The two leaders are to meet in Geneva next month. It suggests a formalized, prearranged plan. You see it in official announcements all the time.
We've built these complex sentences. Now we need to make sure the overall communication, whether it's a speech or an essay, flows smoothly without being redundant.
Yes. This next section is all about the tools that polish the final product.
Let's start with ellipsis, the art of omission.
Ellipsis is just the practice of omitting words that are already understood from the context. It dramatically improves conciseness and speed. It's like deleting unnecessary code from your speech.
We often see it in subordinate clauses of time or reason, where the subject and the verb be are just redundant. For example, while waiting for the results, the team reviewed their strategy.
You're just omitting they were, or although tired, she continued working. It's cleaner.
We also use ellipsis after auxiliary verbs to avoid repeating the main verb. If someone asks, "Did you receive the memo?" You don't say, "No, I didn't receive the memo."
You just say, "No, I didn't." The rest is understood. The omission is natural and efficient. Mastering ellipsis is really central to sounding agile and not overly wordy.
And substitution works alongside ellipsis, right? Replacing a previously mentioned phrase with a shorter stand-in.
Exactly. We commonly use do so, do it, or do that to replace an entire verb phrase. It's invaluable in formal documents. The client requested we submit the final invoice, and we have already arranged to do so.
You're avoiding having to submit the final invoice.
And we use one or ones to replace nouns that have already been established. I need to purchase a new monitor, preferably a large one. Or these current proposals are weak, we need stronger ones.
So substitution ensures your arguments build gracefully without fatiguing the listener with repetition.
Then there's parallelism. This is crucial for rhetorical power, for clarity, and for rhythm. It just means that when you list elements or connect ideas with certain conjunctions, they all have to share the exact same grammatical structure.
So in list, if one element is a gerund, they all have to be gerunds. Correct example. The job requires analyzing market trends, developing strategic partnerships, and managing client relations. All fairing forms. It creates that clean, clear rhythm.
And this rule is applied very rigidly to correlative conjunctions, things like both, and, not only .a, but also either .or. The grammatical form following the first part of the pair has to match the form following the second.
So if the first element is a noun, the second has to be a noun. The CEO discussed not only the rising costs, but also the potential solutions.
And if the first is an adjective, the second must be an adjective. The presentation was both persuasive and engaging. That balance ensures maximum rhetorical impact.
Okay, so the final crucial step in C1 mastery is understanding that grammar and vocabulary are fundamentally intertwined. It's that interface between structure and word choice that determines native-like fluency.
Absolutely. Let's take phrasal verbs. Knowing the meaning is only half the battle. C1 proficiency demands knowing their grammatical behavior, specifically transitivity and separability.
So, separable phrasal verbs, like put off, meaning to delay, they allow the object to be placed either after the particle or between the verb and the particle.
But, and this is the key rule, if the object is a pronoun, it must go in the middle. You can say put off the meeting or put the meeting off, but you have to say put it off.
Right. And then inseparable phrasal verbs like look after, they just don't permit separation at all. You have to say look after the children and look after them.
And the three-part phrasal verbs like get along with or look forward to are always inseparable. You can't say I look the conference forward to. Understanding these subtle rules is the difference between fluency and genuine accuracy.
And finally, collocations.
This is the key to naturalness. Collocations are just the accepted combinations of words that naturally go together. They're what makes English sound intrinsically right. An intermediate speaker might use grammatically correct words, but combine them in a way that just sounds off.
Right, a sure sign of non-C1 status. So we need to move beyond just memorizing single words and actively memorize these set phrases.
For verb-noun combinations, you make a decision, you take a risk, you pay attention, you don't do a decision.
For adjective-noun pairs, you need to know that rain is heavy, not strong. Sleep is deep, not profound. And disappointment is bitter, not sour.
These combinations are fixed. They have to be learned actively.
And it's the same with adverb-adjective combinations. C1 demands that specificity. Something is highly recommended or utterly ridiculous. Just using very all the time really diminishes the impact.
Yes, the ability to use the exact adverb required, like acutely aware or painfully slow, demonstrates a real control over this lexicogrammar interface. Active memorization of these combinations is critical. It allows your thoughts to be expressed quickly, efficiently, and with that final polish of C1 precision.
Well, that brings us to the end of a very deep dive that meticulously detailed the architectural requirements for C1 grammar. We've covered a lot.
We have.
We moved from the versatility of the verb with complex tenses and mixed conditionals all the way through manipulating sentence structure with inversions, and we finished our toolkit with techniques for conciseness and flow.
The essential takeaway here, I think, is that mastery is achieved through conscious application. It's not just passive knowledge. You have to consistently integrate these powerful structures into your own communication.
You have to push past that comfort zone.
You really do. Push past the simple sentence structures and actually experiment with these advanced forms to truly embed them in your active language.
So here's a final provocative thought for you to take away. The next time you consume any sophisticated English media, a legal document, a TED Talk, a high-level news editorial, challenge yourself. Try to spot 5 examples of inversion, or 5 examples of nominalization, or 5 reduced relative clauses.
That's a great challenge.
Look for that grammar framework hiding just beneath the surface of the ideas.
And notice how those structures create emphasis, formality, and conciseness. And then the important part, try to replicate that effect in your next piece of writing or your next important conversation. That active pursuit of the underlying structure. That is the path to C1 mastery.
You found this deep dive helpful? Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel.
Thank you for joining us, and keep practicing these advanced tools. We'll see you on the next deep dive.